Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC Fight for the Troops 2. I'll be giving my predictions for the 5 main card fights. But for my last set of picks for UFC 125, I went 2 wins, 2 losses, and a tie on the card. Started off very well with 2 wins turning out exactly how I called them, but then I dropped the next 2 fights. My biggest fear with Brandon Vera was realized he seemed more focused on protecting his face than defending against Thiago on the mat. And not to make any excuses, but I found out after the Levin stand fight that Levin was supposedly sick, which in turn affected his performance. Not something you can really prepare for when making predictions. Secondly, Brian Stann looked fantastic in that fight, and he's really making large strides as a fighter, which when a guy is improving as much as he is from one fight to the next, it's hard to know what's predicted based on his past performances. As for Frankie Edgar, I thought he was done in round 1. He fought through it and should have got the victory in that fight. I saw the fight was either 48-46 Edgar or 47-47. I struggle to see where Gray won a round after the first, but that's why you don't leave it up to the judges. As always, Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions is associated with sportsinteraction.com. Click on the link in the description below to get your free deposit bonus. Now, without further ado, let's get to predictions. In the first fight of the night, we have 2 155-pounders squaring off as 17-4 Cole Miller will battle 12-5 Matt Wyman. Miller has won 2 in a row in 4 of his last 5, while Wyman has also won 2 consecutive fights. Miller pays $1.48, and Wyman is the underdog at $2.45. Looking first at Wyman, he's a very aggressive fighter, and he's willing to fight both on his feet and on the mat. He's never been submitted, and has only been knocked out once in 17 fights, which indicates to me that he's difficult to finish. On his feet, his striking has been improving. He likes to throw head kicks and big winging punches. He doesn't string together too many fluid combinations, but uses consecutive strikes in more of a brawling style. He does have knockout power, as he demonstrated when he stopped Thiago Tavares, and as I said, he has never been stopped, but he has been hurt by an opponent's stand-up skills. Sam Stout used a liver punch to drop Wyman, and Michihiro Agiyawa rocked him as well. Wyman uses his strikes to set up his takedowns. He likes to rush forward with punches, get an opponent backing up, and then drop down for a double leg. On the mat, Wyman is equally aggressive. He has some serious ground and pound and really works hard to pass. In his earlier matches, he had a tendency to leave too much space between himself and a downed opponent, but more recently he has fixed this problem. And Matt does hold 4 submission victories, including the phantom win over Matt Danzig. 2 areas that concern me are his gas tank. His early pace can result in his endurance failing, but he's still quite dangerous when this does happen. The second thing is that Matt makes a lot of mistakes on the ground. When he hastily attempts to advance his position, he has been reversed on several occasions, and even though he's never been submitted, he has made errors which resulted in being nearly tapped out. Now, Cole Miller is a bit of an enigma. He's a lanky fighter that likes to fight from the outside while looking to get in close, if that makes any sense. Cole has 12 submission wins, he's a BJJ brown belt, and his long legs and arms give him ample opportunity to lock in submissions that other fighters aren't able to do. Cole won't hesitate to pull guard and will even jump on a standing opponent looking to get the fight to the mat. When he gets it there, like an elite level striker uses combinations, Miller strings together submission attempts, grabbing for a heel hook, a Darce choke, maybe an armbar, and the list continues. Miller's stand-up is improving. He likes to use a variety of kicks to keep his opponent off balance, effectively implements a jab, sometimes doubling it up to set up his power in the right hand, and will mix in knee strikes when the opportunity arises. Miller rocked Ross Pearson last time out before submitting him, but the big issue for me is Miller's chin. He has been knocked out twice in his career. Jeremy Stevens pounded him out, and Efrain Escudero dropped him, and Dan Lozon rocked him as well, but Cole did recover for the eventual win in that fight. Miller's chin against Wyman's striking power and ground and pound is a red flag, but Wyman's predilection to making mistakes on the mat against Miller's submissions is equally concerning. The question is, what happens first? The fight starts on the feet, which could make me lean towards Wyman, but Miller will have a 6-inch reach advantage, which he used well against Pearson. Miller's striking is more technical than Wyman's, and if he uses that jab, he could really have success on the feet. I think that Miller will do well in the striking if he avoids Wyman's power, and if the fight goes to the ground, Cole will have the advantage. So my prediction is Cole Miller defeating Matt Wyman, potentially by submission. We climb the ladder now to the UFC heavyweights as 5-2 Pat Barry will square off with 12-4 Joey Beltran. Beltran is looking to rebound after a defeat that ended a 3-fight win streak, while Barry has dropped 2 of his last 3 fights. Barry will be the favorite in the range of $1.40, while Beltran will pay out around $2.75. Pat Barry is a veteran of 20 kickboxing matches, which means it is safe to say he's a world-class striker, but only having competed in 7 MMA contests, there's always room for improvement. That might be an understatement when looking at his ground game. He has been working to better this aspect, but in his brief career it is quite evident where fighters prefer to fight Barry. He has been submitted twice, both by chokes and both by fighters not well known for their ground game. So to put it simply, Pat Barry's a novice on the mat. His striking game is his key to victory. He has big-time power, but not just in his hands. So far in his career, 4 of his 5 knockouts have come as the direct result of his leg attacks. Barry throws his kicks with vicious intentions, and he can really take a lot away from his opponent's attacks as the damage begins to pile up. He can stop a fight with a kick to any part of the body, legs, body, or head. It doesn't matter. Barry has success with his punches as well, as he demonstrated when he dropped Mirko Cro Cop twice with his right in the opening round of their fight. He is also very quick for a heavyweight, which helps to make his stand-up even more dangerous. Now, he is a confident fighter, which might have cost him against Haig. He hurt Haig with a big shot, but then he got taken down and submitted. His endurance is a little bit of a question, as he has ended the majority of his fights quickly, and against Cro Cop, he did slow down in the later stages. Joey Beltran, for the most part, favors the striking game as well, but where Barry is a technical striker, Beltran is very much a brawler. He likes to throw big looping punches, uppercuts, and will put his head down and throw recklessly. He has knockout power, 10 KOs, and has never been stopped. In his last fight against Matt Mitrione, Beltran seemed unable to get the range, and he was never really comfortable, which I think cost him the fight. He has a tendency to chase opponents down and will pin them against the cage in an effort to control them. He's a BJJ blue belt with only 1 submission win, and he's not afraid to take the fight to the ground, and did a decent job reversing Hollis Gracie in his UFC debut and wound up on top. Outside of the UFC, Beltran defeated Houston Alexander by stoppage. The fight spent a great deal of time on the mat, and despite Houston's well-documented shortcomings on the mat, Joey really didn't dominate him as others have in the past. Beltran's endurance isn't great, but he seems to be able to accomplish a lot with what he does have. This fight is an interesting matchup. I don't expect it to go the distance, and I don't expect to see a lot of mat work. I did say that Beltran has used takedowns previously in his fights with success, and that Barry is weakest on the mat. That should be a recipe for a Beltran victory, but Joey didn't look that good on the mat against Alexander, who was undersized in that fight, and Barry had been training with Brock Lesnar in preparation for the Lesnar-Velasquez fight, which I'm thinking HD might have worked on both his takedown defense and his grappling in that time. On the feet, I feel more comfortable relying on Barry's technical skills than Beltran's brawling style. Watch the kickboxer to use his leg kicks and speed to wear down the executioner, and in a similar fashion to the Mitrione fight, Joey will struggle to find his comfort zone. This is a big step up for Joey Beltran, at least in the striking department, so I'll be taking Pat Barry to defeat Joey Beltran by stoppage. We move now to the UFC featherweight division as 2 former UFC lightweights return 10 pounds later. Mark Hominick, 19-8, riding a 4-fight win streak, will meet 11-7-1 George Roop, who will be in the search of consecutive wins for the first time in 7 fights. I have Hominick as the heavy favorite, paying in the range of $1.35, while Roop will sit at $2.95. George Roop's highlight reel head kick knockout of the Korean Zombie was a huge victory for a fighter that had been struggling with only 2 wins in his last 6 fights. The most defining feature of Roop is that he stands 6'1", which at featherweight almost always gives him a significant height advantage. But I use the term advantage lightly, because he is usually so much taller than his opponent, he has a tendency to slouch down in his stance, which does 2 things. Takes away from his reach, and more significantly, his body position results in his chin sticking out and becoming an easy target. In his fights with George Soteropoulos, Eddie Wyman, and Leonard Garcia, he got tagged. Even though he's never been knocked out, I see potential for that to be changed by a power puncher. Roop has a tendency to keep fights standing, even though he has some solid submission skills. He will take fights to the mat on occasion, and was able to reverse and wind up on top of an elite grappler in Soteropoulos. Roop does a lot of circling in the stand-up, which can give opponents difficulties, especially when he attacks from different angles. He likes to use body kicks, will utilize the jab, along with some power punches, and because of his height, throwing the head kick, as we have already seen, is always an option. Mark Hominick brings a lot into the octagon. He's got 8 knockout victories and 7 wins by way of submission. He is a technical striker with power, and he has an underrated ground game. The Canadian is a patient striker. He waits for his openings and looks to capitalize. He has power in his right hand, but his best punch just might be his left hook. Hominick will also utilize a very stiff jab, heavy leg kicks, and a liver punch that can be deceptively effective. On the defensive, he keeps his hands up well and moves very well, backing up and side to side, making him hard to hit, and he has been working on his takedown defense. Most nights, Hominick would prefer to keep the fight standing, as he has been submitted 5 times, but should it go to the mat, he is still quite capable. 2 of his last 4 wins have been by submission, and both were the result of being taken down, defending well off his back, and then locking in the submission. In his last fight, he fought the smart fight, letting Leonard Garcia swing and miss and get tired, and then Hominick picked him apart. This fight could have title contender implications, with the winner moving a step closer to Jose Aldo. When Roop fights, there's always the issue of how his opponent will react to the size difference. I think that Hominick will react just fine. This matchup should be reminiscent of the Roop-Wyman matchup. Roop seemed entirely unable to catch up with his opponent, all the while getting picked apart by the more technical striker. Roop's stand-up looked good against the Korean Zombie because Jung used very limited movement, which Hominick will do the complete opposite of. Expect Hominick to attack and then avoid, frustrating Roop all night. So my pick for this fight is Mark Hominick to defeat George Roop by decision. Returning to the heavyweight division for the co-main event of the night, undefeated 3-0 Matt Mitrione will square off with 12-4 Tim Hague. Hague is making his third run with the company and is returning after 2 first-round wins outside of the octagon. Mitrione has yet to face defeat in his brief career and is coming off an impressive decision win over Joey Beltran. For the fight, Mitrione will be the heavy favorite at $1.34, while Hague will pay out around $3. Tim Hague might be best known for being on the wrong end of the fastest official KO in UFC history, which really isn't a good thing. Hague is back in the UFC again. He earned an upset in his UFC debut, got beat in his next 2 fights, then released. Came back as an injury replacement to face Joey Beltran, was defeated, and then released again. Hague's run in the UFC has not been memorable to say the least. Hague's striking is fairly simple. He does have one-punch knockout power, and he likes to rely on that. He tends to throw single strikes, sometimes a 1-2, but usually nothing more than that. He will mix in some kicks. He will also throw knees from the clinch when he gets in tight. In one of his most recent victories, Hague was struggling in the stand-up until he delivered a vicious knee to the body of his opponent, ending the fight instantly. On the mat, Tim is a BJJ blue belt with 3 career victories via submission, including his lone win in the UFC. He's a big fighter at 6'4", and usually he's pushing the weight limit. He moves fairly well for a heavyweight, and his endurance is decent. Hague's ability to take a punch worries me. Not so much the highlight knockout against Duffy, but against Pat Barry he got hurt early on, and against Zach Jensen in his first fight after leaving the UFC, he was also getting the worst in stand-up and took several shots that seemed to buckle his legs. Matt Mitrione is still new to the world of MMA, even if you count his time on The Ultimate Fighter. He still would only have a grand total of 5 fights, but this is the second time we'll be predicting a Matt Mitrione fight. He has been improving with each fight. His stand-up is quite relaxed and loose, which can be quite frustrating for an opponent. He has knockout power, very heavy leg kicks, and can throw up a left high kick with relative ease. He has an 82-inch reach and uses it very well, keeping his opponents at the end of his jab. Against Kimbo Slice, he utilized the clinch to deliver some powerful knees that did a lot of damage. On the mat, he's working to become a versatile fighter, threatening with different submissions, but so far unable to finish a fight with one. His cardio has been improving quite remarkably since the show. In his last fight against Beltran, he got stronger as the fight advanced, which I felt was one of the deciding factors in that matchup. I think that most of this fight will be fought on the feet, and Mitrione has been steadily improving, while I think that Hague has been sticking with the same game plan, which in the UFC has got him a 1-3 record. Matt will have a significant reach advantage in the neighborhood of 6 inches, which will only add to Hague's struggles in the stand-up. Hague doesn't throw a lot of combinations, usually looking for the one-punch knockout, which, if he connects, is great. I don't see that happening in this fight. I expect that Mitrione will be very active on his feet with a lot of movement, uses reach to stay away from Hague's power, and his leg kicks take a lot out of the Canadian. So I'll be taking Matt Mitrione to defeat Tim Hague by stoppage. In the main event of the evening, Evan Dunham was originally scheduled to square off with Kenny Florian, but due to an injury, Florian bowed out and Melvin Guillard stepped in. Guillard holds a record of 44-9-3 and is riding a 3-fight win streak, while Dunham sits at 11-1 as coming off his first career defeat. Dunham will be a solid favorite in this fight, paying out at $1.37, while Guillard will settle in at $2.85. Melvin Guillard is a fighter on the rise. He is very quick on his feet, which adds another dimension to his striking game that other fighters don't possess. In the Stevens fight, the difference was Guillard's quickness and his ability to bounce in and out. Guillard strikes and then moves away, and as a result, his opponents do a lot of swinging and missing. He has significant power at 14 knockouts, while never having been knocked out himself. Melvin also has some decent kicks that he can use as both his initial strike or as part of a combination. Guillard is a solid wrestler, but seems to have gotten away from that, focusing primarily on his striking, which makes him a little one-dimensional. Guillard has pretty good cardio, but he will slow down as the fight progresses, or if an opponent is able to put continual pressure on him. Now, the biggest issue with Melvin is his submission record. Guillard has been tapped out 7 times, including his last 6 defeats. But since Melvin joined Greg Jackson's camp, he has made strides in defending against good grapplers. But before he can validate that, Guillard Before we can validate that Guillard has really made improvements in this area, we will need to put that to the test by a high-level grappler. Evan Dunham's race to title contention was temporarily stalled by the close decision defeat against Sean Shirk, a fight that came down to the issue of takedowns versus submission attempts. The biggest number on Dunham's record is 6 submission wins, but his grappling skills are something that have only been recently put on display in the UFC. Evan was awarded his BJJ black belt, which adds more prestige to Dunham's mat skills. But like I said, he only recently showed us what he can do on the mat because his stand-up is pretty good as well. In his UFC debut, he knocked out Per Eklund. Evan is light on his feet, moves quite well, and keeps his chin tucked. Along with his punches, Evan will mix in knees and kicks, and can be really effective when he opens up like he did in later stages of the Shirk fight. On the mat, he only holds 1 submission win in the UFC, but he demonstrated how dangerous he can be when he locks Sean Shirk in multiple near submissions. He scrambles quite well, usually ending up in an advantageous position, and actively attacks off his back. He has good endurance fighting bell to bell, keeping a nice, even pace to his attack. Now, this was a fight I originally thought would be easy to call, but having rewatched both fighters, this fight could be far closer than the odds indicate. Guillard's stand-up is not your everyday approach to striking, and his quickness could really give Dunham problems. Efrain Escudero rocked Evan Dunham and had him in trouble in their fight, which I think Melvin is more than capable of reproducing. But I do think that Guillard's striking success was inflated in his last fight because Jeremy Stephens stood flat-footed and directly in front of him, never threatened a takedown. Dunham won't do any of this. I think that if Evan fights the smart fight, he will close the distance, take him down, control him on the mat. Guillard's newly acquired skills will be put to the test in this fight, but I have to take Evan Dunham to get back in the win column with a submission victory over Melvin Guillard. So there are my 5 predictions for UFC Fight for the Troops 2. You can check out the Sports Interaction betting card at the top of the screen. You can see the odds and payout for the event. And just before we continue, I'd like to apologize. I am a little bit under the weather, so it has affected my ability to talk during this video. And I did forget to mention my new show layout. I hope you like it. And again, I've added my own Kamikaze Overdrive MMA rankings for the UFC in the 5 weight classes. And in the near future, I'll be adding the bantam and featherweight rankings as they see a little bit more action in the octagon. And I'll also be doing separate rankings for Strikeforce. My next show most likely will be predictions for both Strikeforce Diaz versus Santos and UFC 126 Silva versus Belfort. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back here shortly.